Hey, what's up? Serpentine here, taking a look at the multiplayer first-person shooter Battlefront, developed by DICE, same guys behind Battlefield 3 and Mirror's Edge. Battlefront continues the Rebel and Empire war with infantry, vehicles and ships battling it out for domination. From outside looking in, Battlefront has been labelled as a Star Wars reskin for Battlefield. However, the game plays more like PlanetSide 2 more than anything else, at least for the Assault Walker game mode. It's more about overwhelming the objective with manpower and continually zerging until successful or until a new objective pops up. Due to there not being any transport vehicles in the game, the player spawns are extremely close to the objective, and with no real punishment for dying except maybe about a 5-second respawn timer, it leads to brute force pushing rather than any real high level strategies or plays. Unfortunately, you can't select where you spawn either out of the two possible spawn locations, so you can end up on the other side of the map from where you want to be. You can, however, spawn on your partner, which is either someone you partied up with beforehand or someone you were randomly matched while in the game. Being a futuristic shooter, Battlefront does a couple of things differently in terms of its shooting mechanics. Projectile weaponry has been traded in for laser weaponry, the biggest difference being the overheating mechanic as compared to ammunition. After a long sustained burst with your gun, it will eventually overheat and require a short amount of time to cool off. There is a fast cooldown mechanic where if you hit R at the right time, your gun will instantly cool off. The mechanic is pretty easy to hit the first couple of times, but if you keep doing it, the space that you're able to hit will get smaller and smaller. The types of guns are still the common assault rifles, submachine guns, light machine guns and pistol variants. However, the sights and scopes for these guns have been completely removed, with all of the guns during the beta having the same sights and zoom, except for the light machine gun. So there isn't any real gun customization in the game. Battlefront also allows you to play in either first person or third person, able to change on the fly, and for me at least feels a little bit better to play in the third person. You can also change your camera position while in an aircraft, with the first person having really cool cockpits, fully immersing you into the Star Wars dogfighting experience. Your character loadout consists of a primary gun, 3 pieces of equipment and a trait. The equipment is the card you see at the bottom right hand side of the screen and is only interchangeable outside of the game. There are obviously going to be more options once released, but during the beta you could choose between an explosive grenade, best used against infantry, especially those camping the objective, an ion grenade that is super effective against vehicles and turrets, a jetpack that will get you around the map a lot faster and easier, as well as getting you places that other players without the jetpacks can't, and finally a sniper rifle that deals a ton of damage if not one-shotting with a headshot. These pieces of equipment are what's available to equip on the hand slots, but there is also an activatable slot, that items like a personal shield that soaks up a lot of damage but makes you incapable of shooting, and an ion power up to your primary weapon which makes it effective against vehicles and turrets for a short time. These items work a little differently in the fact they build up and use charges which can be found around the map but can also be purchased with in-game credits. You can also use these in-game credits to unlock additional guns, equipment, traits and activatables. Only one trait was available during the beta, being the sharpshooter trait, that when you headshot kill someone, your equipment cooldowns are reduced by a certain percentage. Basically, these will be passive bonuses that will benefit certain playstyles. The vehicles available are somewhat limited, at least for ground vehicles, the only truly pilotable ground vehicle being the AT-ST Walker, which is extremely powerful at pushing up and clearing objectives, but can be focused down relatively quickly. It has 3 different armaments with default laser rifles, an artillery strike for enemies hiding behind cover, and a lock-on missile that can easily take out turrets and provide some anti-air support. This walker is only available for the Empire, and honestly more could have been done with the mechanics surrounding them, for example weak points, something that isn't available on the bigger AT-ATs either, and could be easily added to the back paneling of each of them for a little bit of strategic play. Something else that I think would have been great is being able to steal AT-STs by jetpacking onto the roof and throwing the pilot out. This would help greatly with the balance problem currently plaguing the game mode, while also just being a really cool thing to be able to do. As for the AT-ATs, you basically just take control of the head and weapons, and while it might have been cool to control the movement too, I see why they opted not to, due to the way the game mode is set up to be a linear movement rather than an open battlefield. The weapons available on the AT-AT include the default laser rifles that are slightly explosive, one-shotting any enemies nearby, explosive rounds that are best used for taking out turrets on the ground rather than infantry, and finally an orbital strike that will lay down devastating firepower in a large area. Aircraft, on the other hand, are extremely varied, with 5 pilotable variants including X-Wings, A-Wings, and Snow Speeders for the Rebels, and TIE Fighters and TIE Interceptors for the Empire. Each ship handles differently, most noticeably the Snow Speeder, where its main purpose is to trip the AT-ATs, not really dogfighting, so it handles like a flying brick. There is some weird autopiloting going on that pulls up automatically while flying towards the ground in all of the aircraft that makes it hard to perform ground assault runs, but while you're not heading straight towards the ground, they handle very similar to the jets in Battlefield, with a couple of extra maneuvers you can perform to either escape a missile lock or just to turn around really fast. They also have abilities on cooldowns, including things like missiles, extreme boosts, and a radar jammer. All these vehicles are obtainable via power-ups found around the map and will always spawn in the same location. The Empire have it a bit easier than the Rebels, as their vehicle power-ups are found at their spawn. Rebels, however, will have to push up to the objectives to be able to get their vehicles, which doesn't make much sense other than to reinforce the fact that the Rebels are in a desperate position and have to fight for every little advantage they can. Vehicles aren't the only power-ups you can obtain though. Special equipment can also be found, including things like smart rockets, orbital strikes, and various automatic and manually operated turrets. These aren't terribly important for the Empire to obtain, but for the Rebels, a well-placed orbital strike can deal a quarter of an AT-AT's health. Finally, heroes can also be obtained through power-ups, allowing you to take to the battlefield as famous characters from the movies. The beta allowing you to try out Luke Skywalker for the Rebels and Darth Vader for the Empire. They each have their own slight ability variations. For example, Luke has a force push that'll one-shot a player, while Vader instead opts for a force choke. Wielding just a lightsaber, you might think they are at a disadvantage from ranged attacks, but by simply holding right mouse button you can deflect incoming fire and aim it back at the player. Each time someone activates a hero, you'll hear their theme music play server-wide, along with different theme music for when they die. You can't regen health as these heroes, instead you actually slowly lose health, so as not to become a nearly unstoppable force. The heroes that are currently expected to be a part of the game include Boba Fett, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and the Emperor. I really hope they add Yoda to that list, as it would be amazing to see him kicking our ass out on the battlefield, flying all over the place. The different game modes in the beta included the main Assault Walker mode, where the objective as the Rebels is to capture and hold comlinks that over time will generate Y-Wings. At certain points in the map, the Y-Wings will attack 2 AT-ATs, dropping their shields and making them vulnerable. The Rebels will have to take them both down before the end to win. The Emperor side simply have to defend these comlinks and the AT-ATs. Unfortunately, playing as the Empire in this mode can get a little bit boring due to them not really having anything to work towards. They don't have massive AT-ATs to destroy, no real overarching goal that they can really impact. There isn't the same adrenaline pumping moment of trying to take down the last AT-AT at the end of a game. For pure infantry experience, there is Drop Zone, which is basically capture the point on a small map where each team is battling for control over escape pods. Nothing too out there with this mode, having no vehicles and no heroes to obtain. There is also co-op missions in what is basically a wave-based game mode where you and a friend can fight for survival as Imperial units are sent your way. Other game modes listed include Supremacy, which will basically be conquest mode from Battlefield, Fighter Squadron, which will be a purely aircraft dogfighting game mode, and Blast, which is a team deathmatch mode. There are a couple of unknown game modes in terms of their actual gameplay, but they are also called Cargo and Droid Run. Finally, in the missions character, you can do battles versus AI or a friend in what looks to be a sort of hero versus hero game mode. I have to give huge props to the team over at DICE for creating some really cool effects and sounds in the game, for example the thermal imploder and the amazingly satisfying sound it makes when it explodes. The squad shield and the sounds that come from the laser fire bouncing off of it, and the aircraft cockpits and sounds are fantastic and really immerse you into the Star Wars experience. Other features of the game include character customization. As to what extent you can customize is currently unknown, as the feature was locked for the beta. You can also collect dioramas or figurines. Again, exactly what this feature is still unknown due to it being locked. Finally, there will be a stats page for the people that like to keep track of their kill-death ratios. The game runs extremely well even on older tech. Even though my graphics card was listed as a minimum requirement, I was still able to get 60 plus frames per second with all the important stuff on high and the rest on medium. Altogether, Star Wars Battlefront is a really fun game for what it is, that being a somewhat on-rails shooter rather than a massive open map with various vehicles like, say, Battlefield. Even with the game type they went with, there still could have been better mechanics to create a truly epic experience, like being able to steal AT-STs. The game's progression system is a little lackluster too, especially for those that like to upgrade and customize their weapons and vehicles. If you're really into the Star Wars universe, then Battlefront is definitely worth a look. If you're more of a Battlefield player, then I suggest maybe waiting to see how the Supremacy mode plays before making your final decision. Anyway, that's been my player preview for Star Wars Battlefront. The game will be officially releasing on the 17th of November on Origin for $60 or your regional equivalent. If you want to find out more about the game, check out the links below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.